Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Nick Malloy and today I'm going to provide you with a demonstration of the tutorial Estimating Event Capacity. In this scenario, you are using GIS to help plan a music festival. Specifically for this tutorial, you're going to determine event capacity based on several factors. This demonstration is based on the written instructions provided to you in Canvas. Sometimes we update them, so you should always use the written instructions when following along this video. Also, check Canvas for specific instructions on what you need to turn in at the end. Different instructors might have different requirements for this assignment. Okay, let's get started. Setting up your workspace. Begin by setting up your workspace. Start by creating your project folder on your computer's desktop. You can call the project folder Event Capacity. Be sure there are no spaces in the name, as this can cause problems. You can use an underscore instead of a space. This course uses a standardized folder structure to help you keep your data organized. Inside the project folder, you should create 3 subfolders: Original, Working, and Final. The Original folder is for storing unaltered copies of your data. The Working folder is either for working copies of your data or data sets you create during the project. The Final folder is for storing your outputs, such as tables, reports, and final map layouts. Setting up a project in ArcGIS Pro. Next, you should launch ArcGIS Pro. If it is your first time working in ArcGIS Pro, you might be prompted to sign in. On the ArcGIS homepage, click Map under the New Project options. When the Create New Project window opens, name the project Event Capacity. It's fine to use spaces here. The next 2 steps are important, so don't skip them. Click the file folder icon so that the location is set to your Event Capacity folder on the desktop. Then uncheck the box next to Create a new folder for this project. The only time you would leave this box checked is if you started here and still needed to create a project folder. In this instance, you don't need to create a new project folder since you already did that earlier. When you create a project in ArcGIS Pro, several elements are added automatically to your workspace files. Open the project folder in Windows File Explorer to see what's inside. You should notice that beyond the 3 subfolders you initially created, Original, Working, and Final, there are a few other items added to your workspace, such as a geodatabase and an ArcGIS project file. Never delete any of these folders and files from your workspace, or you run the chance of corrupting your project. In ArcGIS Pro, you can see the default files in the catalog pane by twirling open the folders. Downloading the project data. Now you'll need to download the project data. You can find direct links to these datasets in the written instructions. It tends to save to your Downloads folder automatically. Once you have it, copy it from your Downloads folder to your Original folder. Next, use 7-zip to decompress the file. Once it's done decompressing, go ahead and delete the original zip file. In ArcGIS Pro, you may need to refresh the original folder to see the files. Drag and drop the imagery onto the map. The map extent should update to the extent of the imagery. Next, add the Event Site feature class to the map. You'll be working with these polygons for digitizing, so take a moment to change the color. Remove the fill color and set the outline color to something that stands out. You want to be able to clearly see the outline of the polygons against the background image. Checking the spatial reference system. For this analysis, you'll be using the spatial reference NAD 1983, UTM Zone 10 North. It's important that each of the datasets in the analysis uses the same spatial reference system. Otherwise, you can introduce unwanted spatial error in your results. Take a moment to check the spatial reference of the map. Just open the map properties and go to the Coordinate Systems tab. Okay, it looks like this map is using the one we want, so I'm going to move on to the next step. Creating new feature classes. In a previous activity, you learned how to create new shapefiles and digitize some features. You'll be using a lot of the same skills you learned previously. However, this time you'll be creating a new feature class in the Project Geo database instead of a shapefile in the working folder. The process is almost identical. Just right-click on the Project Geo database and choose New, then Feature Class. When the Create Feature Class window opens, name it Parking. Make sure the feature class type is set to Polygon. Later, you'll need to add some fields to the attribute table. I'm going to take a little shortcut and add them now. Notice at the bottom of the window it says Page 1 of 6. You can click these little dots on the top to get to the next page or click the Next button. Here we can add the fields that we'll need later. You can see the fields in the next section of the written instructions. The fields are name, area, count, and capacity. For the name field, just leave the data type as text. For the area field, set the data type to double. The next two fields will be long integers, count and capacity. When you're ready, go to the next page and verify the spatial reference. Make sure it says NAD 1983 UTM Zone 10 North. You can skip over the rest of the pages and click Finish. If you decided not to add the fields here, that's okay. You can always add them in the next step. The parking feature class gets added to the contents pane, but you won't see anything on the map because it's empty. In the next step, you will digitize the parking area. Skill drill, digitizing. By now, you should be somewhat familiar with digitizing features, so you'll find that the written instructions don't have any step-by-step guidance. I'll give you a short demonstration to get you started. To begin, go to the Edit ribbon and click the Create button. Select the parking layer in the Create Features pane. The editing tools will pop up near the bottom. Use the line tool to outline the shape of the parking area. You can use the example in the written instructions as a guide to how this should look. Do your best to make it as accurate as possible. I find that changing the color so the layer has no fill color makes it easier to see. It's also easier to start with the parts of the shape that have straight lines. You can use your mouse wheel to zoom in and out as needed. Just work your way around the shape and add more nodes when you get to a curve. When you're ready to close the polygon, you'll need to finish with a double click. When you complete the polygon, click the Save button on the Edit ribbon to save the changes to the GeoDatabase feature class. I'm going to go ahead and add the fill back so that I can see the final results. Skill drill, calculate geometry. The next section in the instructions tells you how to add several fields to the parking feature class. I already did this step during the creation process. However, if you skipped that step, you could open the attribute table and add the fields now. Next, you want to populate the area field with square meters. Just right-click on the field and select Calculate Geometry. When the Calculate Geometry window opens, set the property to Area and the area units to square meters. Then click OK. Take a moment to copy the area into a Microsoft Excel table. Save the Excel workbook to your final folder. You'll need to keep track of your results. Skill drill. Calculate field. In this step, you'll need to use the Calculate Field tool to determine the number of parking spaces that fit in the parking lot. Then, based on the number of parking spaces, you determine the event capacity. Let's take a look at the criteria for the parking lot count in the written instructions. 20% of the total parking area must be reserved for access lanes between the spaces. Each parking space is 30 meters squared. 20 parking spaces must be reserved for staff and emergency vehicles. The final result must be a whole number, no fractions. Many find these types of problems difficult to solve. The best way to solve it is to take it one step at a time. So the first criterion is that 20% of the total parking area must be reserved for access lanes between the spaces. So how much area does that leave us? Well, 100% of the area minus 20% leaves us 80% of the total area to work with. You can also write it as 0.8. So let's write that out as a formula. Count equals area times 0.8. This is going to give us 80% of the total area that we can use for the parking spaces. Next, we have to figure out how many parking spaces we can fit in 80% of the area. Well, we also know that each parking space takes up 30 square meters. The area is already in square meters, so no conversion is necessary. All you need to do is to divide by 30. Just to be safe, I'm going to wrap this part of the equation in a set of parentheses to define the order of operations. This means that area times 0.8 will be calculated first. Then the result will be divided by 30 to get the total number of parking spaces in the parking lot. Now that you know how many parking spaces fit in the parking lot, the last step is to subtract the number of parking spaces reserved for staff and emergency vehicles. Again, I will use another set of parentheses to separate the first part of the formula from this last step. We need to make sure that we subtract 20 only after everything else gets calculated. So this is the formula I will enter into the field calculator. To open the Calculate Field tool, just right-click on the Count field. You'll enter the formula after the equal sign. Whenever you use the Calculate Field tool, it's important that you avoid typing in the formula manually as much as you can. I find that using the buttons on the tool helps to avoid typos. I'm going to double-click on the Area field. Next, I'll use the buttons to insert the multiplication operator. Then I will type in 0.8. I'll wrap that part in a set of parentheses. I'll click the division button and type in 30. I'll wrap all of this in another set of parentheses and then subtract 20. Then I'll click OK. Okay, so I got 625. Your answer might be slightly different depending on how you digitized the parking lot. As long as you are not too sloppy, your answer should be close to mine. You might recall that the last criterion said that the final result had to be in whole numbers. We took care of this when we set the data type to long integer. Notice that there are no decimal places in my answer. Okay, so we have a total of 625 parking spaces available for attendees of the music festival. Next, you have to figure out how many people this represents. According to the written instructions, the planning committee has decided that they will estimate the average of 3 people per car. 625 parking spaces means 625 cars. If there are 3 people per car, how many people are there? To get the answer, you need to multiply the count field by 3. So the formula would be capacity equals count times 3. Let's do that in the field calculator. I'll clear out the old formula. Then I'll double click on the count field and multiply it by 3. Let's see what we get. According to my calculations, I get 1,875. That means if the number of tickets sold were only based on the available parking, I could sell 1,875 tickets. Like I said earlier, your answer might be slightly different if you had a different area, but it should be close. Okay, the last step is to enter the name in the attribute table. You can just double click and type in parking lot. This is going to be one of our map labels. Just be sure to go to the edit ribbon and click the save button to make the changes permanent in the geodatabase feature class. This is different from saving your project, which is another button in the upper left corner. Let's move on to the next section in the written instructions. Skill drill, digitizing. In this step, you will need to estimate the event capacity based on the event field. The event field is going to be the place where people congregate during the music festival. It's going to contain a stage, vendor booths, and a place where people can watch performances. The first step is to digitize the area. The written instructions describe where the event field will be located, and it provides an example for you to copy. I'll start by creating a new feature class in the geodatabase. I'm going to add the name field, the area field, the count field, and the capacity field. Be sure that you use the correct data types for each one. I'll double check the spatial reference. Everything looks good, so I will create the feature class. Next, I'm going to digitize the shape of the event field based on the example in the written instructions. Remember to double click on the last node to close the polygon, and don't forget to save your edits. Skill drill, Determining event field capacity. Okay, so now we have to repeat the steps to estimate the event field capacity. To start, I'm going to enter the label I want to show on my map in the name field. Don't forget to save this edit. Then I'll go ahead and update the area field using Calculate Geometry. The area should be in square meters. Okay, so let's look at the criteria in the written instructions for determining the number of people that will fit into the event field. 200 square meters must be set aside for the staging area. 500 square meters should also be reserved for vendor booths, staff, security, and medical personnel. To comply with fire and safety regulations, the maximum capacity of the remaining area at any given time is calculated at 2 square meters per person. The final result must be a whole number, no fractions. Okay, so let's write this out. 200 square meters must be set aside for the staging area. So we can write count equals area minus 200. Next, it says 500 square meters should also be reserved for vendor booths, staff, security, and medical personnel. So that means we have to subtract another 500. Or we can write it as area minus 700. So this gives us the area left over for people. According to the written instructions, each person will take up 2 square meters. Okay, so let's wrap this first part in a set of parentheses. Then we can divide that total by 2 to get the count. Let's try it out in the Calculate Field tool. I'll double-click to add the area field, then minus 700. I'll wrap that in parentheses and divide by 2. Okay, let's see what I get. 8,738 people can fit on the event field. Now, for the capacity, it says the planning committee does not expect every single attendee to be present in the field at once, even during peak festival activities. They feel confident enough to overestimate the capacity a little. The capacity of the event field will be 100% of the total count. Okay, so in our formula, we could write capacity equals count times 1.1. 1.1 is the same as 110%. Let's add this formula to the Calculate Field tool for the capacity field. I'll just clear out my old formula and enter count times 1.1. Okay, let's see what we get. 9,612. That means based on only the event field capacity, we can sell 9,612 tickets. By the way, don't forget to update your Excel table with your results. Just copy and paste the area and add the count and capacity, 8738 and 9612. It's okay if your numbers are a little different, just as long as they're not too far off. Skill drill, dissolve and erase. For this last part, you need to create the region that will be used for the campground. You don't need to digitize this one. Instead, you're going to combine the lower 2 parcels from the event site layer using the dissolve tool. Then you'll use the event field layer as an erase feature for the erase tool. The goal is to remove this area so that what is left over will be reserved for camping. Okay, let's start by selecting the two parcels. I find it's easiest if you turn off the other layers in the contents pane so that they don't get in the way. All you need to do is use the select tool and click on the middle parcel. Then hold the shift key and click on the bottom parcel. With these two parcels selected, export it as a new feature class. I'm going to call it Event Site Selection. Remember to clear your selected features. Next, open the Dissolve tool. You can find it on the Analysis tab in the Tools group. I'm going to call the Output feature class Dissolve. You can leave all the other settings and click Run. This will dissolve everything into one polygon. I'll change the color of the dissolve layers so that you can see what I mean. Next, I'm going to use the Erase tool. Just click on the toolbox and type Erase in the search box. When you open the tool, use the dissolve layer as the input feature. For the Erase feature, use the event field. I'm going to name the output Campground. Okay, let's see what we have. Okay, I removed the wrong layer. I'll just add it back in. As you can see, the campground has a hole in the shape of the event field. That's what we want. The next step is to add the extra fields in the attribute table. There already is a default area field called shape area, so we don't have to do that. I'll just add the name field and set the type to text. Then I'll add count and make sure it's set to long. And then the same thing for the capacity field. I accidentally created an extra field, so I will delete it after I save the changes. I want my map label to say campground, so I'll enter in that for the name. Don't forget to save your edits. You have to do this every time you manually type something in the attribute table. In the next step, we have to calculate the count and capacity. Skill drill. Calculate field. According to the written instructions, we have to use the following criteria to calculate the count and capacity for the campsites. Each campsite will take up approximately 200 square meters. The immediate area around the homes on each parcel must also be excluded. This will be 22,000 square meters subtracted from the total available area. It is estimated that 12,000 square meters must also be subtracted from the total to exclude certain unusable areas throughout the parcels. 10 campsites must be reserved for staff, security, and medical personnel. The final result must be a whole number, no fractions. Okay, so this one is a little tricky because it mentions the area of the campgrounds first. Each campsite will take up approximately 200 square meters. You won't be using this number until the end of the formula. The first thing to do is to figure out how much of the total area we can use for the campsites. There are two numbers we have to subtract from the total area before we can do anything. We have to subtract 22,000 square meters from the area to account for the homes, and another 12,000 square meters to account for unusable areas throughout the parcel. So our formula would look like this. Count equals area minus 22,000 minus 12,000. Or you can write it as minus 34,000. This is what we have to work with to determine the total number of campsites. Now we can factor in the area of the campsites, which is 200. Each campsite will take up approximately 200 square meters. I'll place a set of parentheses around the first part of the formula. Then I will divide this total by 200. That's going to give me the number of campsites. Okay, so I will go ahead and enter the formula into the Calculate Field tool. I get 842 campsites. So how many people does that represent? According to the written instructions, each campsite will have a limit of 8 people. So our formula for the capacity would be capacity equals count times 8. I'll go ahead and enter that into the Calculate Field tool for the capacity field. I got 6,736. That means based on the number of campsites, we could sell 6,736 tickets. Spatial join. Okay, so this brings us to the last section in the instructions. In this part, you're going to perform a spatial join between the event field and the leisure spots, as well as the lodging places. I'll add both of these layers to the map. You may not be able to see them unless you zoom out. That's fine. You don't need to see them for the next step. So I'm going to go back to my original map extent. By the way, I've turned on the map labels for my 3 areas, and I adjusted the colors. You don't need to do this now, but be prepared to do so later on. Eventually, you'll need to create a map layout to use as a figure in a lab report. We need to find the number of leisure spots within a 30-kilometer radius of the event field site. To do this, you'll use the Spatial Join tool. So the first step is to open the Spatial Join tool. Just click on the Toolbox button on the Analysis tab and type in Spatial Join in the search box. For the target features, use the drop-down menu and choose the event field. For the join features, choose the leisure spots layer. Name the output event field leisure spots. The join operation is going to be 1-to-1. For the match option, choose within a distance. Enter 30 for the search radius and set the units to kilometers. When you're ready, run the tool. To see the results, you'll need to open the attribute table for the event field leisure spots. The answer will be under the join count field. There are 29 leisure spots within a 30-kilometer radius of the event field. Now you're going to repeat the steps for the lodging. If you have the tool still open, you can just change the join features and the output name. So I have 41 lodging locations within a 30-kilometer radius of the event field. Skill drill. Create a map layout. Though it's not part of the written instructions, you should be prepared to create a map of your results. Typically, when you create a map for a report, you should design it at a small size, about 6 by 6 inches. For details on how to create a map layout, check out my previous video, Musical Destination. In that video, I go into more detail on how to set up a layout and insert map elements. For this map, you should include a north arrow and a scale bar. When you add the scale bar, just be sure to adjust the units so that they make sense. This one defaulted to miles, so I'll just change it to meters. Adjust the size to make sure the numbers are appropriate. I think setting it to 200 meters is fine. A map legend won't be necessary as long as you have good labels for each of the regions on the map. In this situation, the legend won't add any additional information, so it's fine to leave it out. However, different instructors teaching this class may have different requirements on what needs to be turned in. Be sure to check the assignment page in Canvas for details. Okay, that's all for this lesson. If you enjoyed this demonstration of estimating event capacity, be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.